Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Namacharya Shravidas Chakravarti, Shri Rupa Shri Sanatana Bhattacharya, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhattadasa Bhagavat, Shri Chandra Swami Prabhu, Shri Tatsmaho, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Paramitanami, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas, Hari Gaura Bhakti Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Shri Radha Shri Gopinath Ki, Shri Vrindavan Matsuridan Ki, Shri Madhavatam Ki, Shri Madhavatam Sridham Ki, Hannamaya Chundamaya Ki, Bhakti Devi Tasya Maharaj Ki, Vividam Harinam Sankirtan Ki, Shri Brahmas Transcendental Bhutta Sri Shri Ki, Shri Shri Kodamatai Maya Kosha Shri Ki, Shri Tasya Maharaj Ki, Shri Girirayal Ki, Shri Narasimha Bhavan Ki, Shri Mati Vrindadevi Ki, Shri Prabhupada Ki, Jai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Deva. Praise Shri Hare Krishna. The Lord should speak in our spiritual master, and the only way by which we can attain pure devotion and service, about our to speak with great humbleness. That is very soul becomes the ocean of material suffering, and attain mercy of Krishna. Only with Krishna my consciousness purified by the words of meditating this lotus life. Attachment to lotus feet is the perfection of the first one desires. Give us my life with eyes and fills my heart with transcendent knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him is magic remembrance, and by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing in his character. Master Master is the earth of mercy. The friend of God, the Lord, Master of the devotees. O Master, devotion unto us. Gives shame to the lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout the three worlds. We take shelter at your lotus feet. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Our dear Lord Shri Prabhupada, our life procession, please make us worthy of the blessings of his
Stories the actual Christ, she knows the sound of the devotees. And the blessings that she likes to hear, especially when they are the devotees. Yeah. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Kodalita, Jaya Maya Kodasi, Jaya Kodalita, Jaya Maya Kodasi,
Jaya Kodalita, Maya Kodasi, Kodalita, Jaya Maya Kodasi.
Shri Shri Gauditama Shashi Ki,
Jai.
Sangam Ki,
Jai.
Prabhupada Ki,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam Ki,
Jai.
Hare Lord Premanandi.
Hare Krishna.
Shri Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, Preaching to America, Part 1. So we're in Chicago, and Prabhupada's talking with Lieutenant David Mosey. He's trying to encourage him to facilitate the Hare Krishna movement because there's such a crime epidemic. And Prabhupada's making the point that if the heart is purified, then there'll be no crime. So Prabhupada's getting to the root of the problem. Illinois State Assemblyman John Porter, who came with his wife, also asked about the solution to crime, but he had a more direct personal interest in spiritual life. Was it possible, he asked, to make spiritual advancement without living in the temple? Srila Prabhupada told him yes, if he chanted Hare Krishna, which he could do anywhere, and he should read the standard books of the Krishna consciousness movement. Mr. Porter also inquired about the Krishna conscious understanding of certain Christian theological points, such as original sin and salvation. Srila Prabhupada, however, did not indulge in discussing theoretical or comparative religion, but emphasized the necessity of strictly following the instructions given by God or his representative. The main business, Prabhupada said, is to understand God. Mr. Porter seemed unlikely to help the devotees get a large building, but he had inquired humbly about spiritual life. Prabhupada's unstinting deliverance of Krishna consciousness was not conditional. If anyone sincerely inquired, be he assemblyman or criminal, Srila Prabhupada was always eager to give him the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, entitled Lord Shivde's Teachings, texts number 21 and 22. Bhuteshu Virudbhya Vidutama Ye Bhuteshu Virudbhya Vidutama Ye Sarishvipas Teshu Saboda Nishta Sarishvipas Teshu Saboda Nishta Tato Manusha Pramatas Tato Api Tato Manusha Pramatas Tatopi Gandharva Siddha Vibhudanuga Ye Gandharva Siddha Vibhudanuga Ye Deva Suribhyo Magavat Pradana Deva Suribhyo Magavat Pradana Dakshatayo Brahmasutas Tu Tesham Dakshatayo Brahmasutas Tutesham Bhava Para So Ata Virincha Virya Bhava Para Sota Virincha Virya Sa Mat Paro Ham Dvija Deva Samat Paro Ham Dvija Deva Bhuteshu Virudbhya Udutamaye Bhuteshu Virudbhya Udutamaye Sarasvipasteshu Sabodhanishta Sarasvipasteshu Sabodhanishta Tato Manushya Pramatastatoti Tato Manushya Pramatastatoti Gandharva Siddha Vibhudanugaye Gandharva Siddha Vibhudanugaye Devasurebhyo Magavat Pradana Devasurebhyo Magavat Pradana Chadayo Brahma Sutastutesham Chadayo Brahma Sutastutesham Bhavara Sota Virincha Virya Bhavara Sota Virincha Virya Samakaroham Dvijadeva Deva Samakaroham Dvijadeva Deva Bhuteshu Virudbhya Udutamaye Sarasvipasteshu Subodhanishta Tato Manusha Pramatastatopi Gandharva Siddha Vibhudanugaye Devasurebhyo Magavat Pradana Dakshadayo Brahma Sutastutesham Bhavapara Sota Virincha Virya Samatparoham Dvijadeva Deva Please chant.
Bhuteshu Virudbhya Udutamaye Sarasvipasteshu Sarishprastheshu Sabodhanishta
Sarishprastheshu Sabodhanishta
Tato Manusha Pramatas Tatopi
Tato Manusha Pramatas Tatopi
Gandhava Siddha Vibhudanugaye
Gandhava Siddha Vibhudanugaye
Devashuryo Bhagavat Pradana
Devasuriyo Bhagavat Pradana
Dakshadayo Brahma Sutras Tutesha
Dakshadayo Brahma Sutras Tutesha
Bhavapanaso Tavarenchavira
Bhagavata Sotavishadeva
Samatparohan Vijadeva Deva
Samaparoham Vijadeva Deva
Uteshu Virudya Uttamaye
Deshu Vijadeva
Sarishtrapasteshu Sabodhanishta
Sarishtrapasteshu Sabodhanishta
Tato Manusya Pramatas Tatopi
Tato Manusya Pramatas Tatopi
Gandhava Siddha Vibhudanugaye
Gandhava Siddha Vibhudanugaye
Devasurevyo Bhagavat Pradana
Devasuriyo Bhagavat Pradana
Dakshadayo Brahma Sutastutesham
Dakshadayo Brahma Sutastitesham
Bhavapara Sotavirinchaveya Samatparoham Dvijadeva Deva
Samaparoham Vijadeva Deva
Please.
Uteshu Virudutamaye
Uteshu Virudutamaye
Sarishtrapasteshu Sabodhanishta
Sarishtrapasteshu Sabodhanishta
Tato Manusya Pramatas Tatopi
Tato Manusya Pramatas Tatopi
Gandhava Siddha Vibhudanugaye
Gandhava Siddha Vibhudanugaye
Devasurevyo Bhagavat Pradana
Devasurevyo Bhagavat Pradana
Dakshadayo Brahma Sutastutesham
Dakshadayo Brahma Sutastutesham
Bhavaparat Sota Virenchavirya
Bhavaparaso Tavirinchavirya
Samatvaroham Vijadeva Deva
Samatparoham Vijadeva Deva
Uteshu among things generated
among things generated
with and without symptoms of life.
without symptoms of life.
Virudya
Virudya
than the planets. Vidutama
Vidutama
far superior.
far superior.
Ye
Yea,
those who.
those who
Sarishrupa
Sarishrupa
moving entities like worms and snakes. Teshu
Teshu
of them.
of them.
Sa
Some
Bodha
Buddha
Nishta
Nisha
those who have developed intelligence.
those who have developed intelligence.
Tata
Tata
than them.
them.
Manusya
Manusya
the human beings.
the human beings.
Pramata
Pramata
the ghostly spirits. Tata api
Tatapi
better than them.
better than them.
Gandharva
Gandharva
inhabitants of Gandharva Loka.
inhabitants of Gandharva.
Appointed singers in the planets of the demigods.
Appointed saints in the planets of the
Siddha
Siddha,
the inhabitants of Siddhaloka
inhabitants of Siddhaloka,
who have all mystic powers.
and all spirit powers.
Vibhudanuga
Vibhudanuga,
the Kinnaras. Ye those who.
those who
Deva
Deva,
demigods.
demigods.
Asurevya
Asurya,
than the Asuras.
Asuras,
Madhava Pradana headed by Indra. Daksha Adaya beginning with Daksha. Brahma Sutta
Brahmasutta,
the direct sons of Brahma. to them, Tesham, of them, Bhava, Lord Shiva, Para, the best, Saha, he, Lord Shiva, Ata, moreover, Virinchavirya, producing from Lord Brahma, Sa, he, Brahma, Matpara, my devotee, Aham, I, Dvija Deva, worshipper of the Brahmanas, or the Lord of the Brahmanas. Translation. Of the two energies manifest, spirit and all matter, beings possessing living force, vegetables, grass, trees, and plants are superior to dull matter, stone, earth, etc. Superior to non-moving plants and vegetables are worms and snakes, which can move. Superior to worms and snakes are animals that have developed intelligence. Superior to animals are human beings, and superior to human beings are ghosts because they have no material bodies. Superior to ghosts are the Gandharvas, and superior to them are the Siddhas. Superior to the Siddhas are the Kinnaras, and superior to them are the Asuras. Superior to the Asuras are the demigods, and of the demigods, Indra, the king of heaven, is supreme. Superior to Indra are the direct sons of Lord Brahma, sons like King Daksha, and supreme among Brahma's sons is Lord Shiva. Since Lord Shiva is the son of Lord Brahma, Brahma is considered superior, but Brahma is also subordinate to me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because I am inclined to the Brahmanas are best of all. Please repeat. Of the two energies manifest, spirit and all matter, beings possessing living force, vegetables, grass, trees, and plants, are superior to all matter, stone, earth, etc. Superior to non-moving plants and vegetables are worms and snakes, which can move. Superior to worms and snakes are animals that have developed intelligence. Superior to animals are human beings, and superior to human beings are ghosts, because they have no material body. Superior to ghosts are the Gandharvas, and superior to them are the Siddhas. Superior to the Siddhas are the Kinnaras, and superior to them are the Asuras. Superior to the Asuras are the demigods, and of the demigods, Indra, the king of heaven, is supreme. Superior to Indra are the direct sons of Lord Brahma, sons like King Daksha, and supreme among Brahma's sons is Lord Shiva. Since Lord Shiva is the son of Lord Brahma, Brahma is considered superior. But Brahma is also subordinate to me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because I am inclined to the Brahmanas are best of all. Prabhupada's purport. In this verse, the Brahmins are given a position superior to that of the Supreme Lord. The idea is that government should be conducted under the guidance of the Brahmins. Although Rishabdev recommended his eldest son, Bharat, as emperor of the earth, he still had to follow instructions of the Brahmins in order to govern the world perfectly. The Lord is worshipped as Brahmanya Dev. The Lord is very fond of devotees or Brahmins. This does not refer to so-called caste Brahmins, but to qualified Brahmins. A Brahmin should be qualified with the 8 qualities mentioned in text 24, such as Shama, Dharma, Satya, and Titiksha. Brahmins should always be worshipped, and under their guidance, the ruler should discharge his duty and rule citizens. Unfortunately, in this age of Kali, the executive is not selected by very intelligent people, nor is he guided by qualified Brahmins. Consequently, chaos results. Mass of people should be educated in Krishna consciousness so that, according to the democratic process, they can select a first-class devotee like Bharat Maharaj to head the government. If the head of the state is headed by qualified Brahmins, everything is completely perfect. In this verse, the evolutionary process is indirectly mentioned. Modern theory that life evolves from matter is to some extent supported in this verse because it is stated, Bhuteshu Viruddhya. That is, the living entities evolve from vegetables, grass, plants, and trees, which are superior to dull matter. In other words, matter also has the potency to manifest living entities in the form of vegetables. In this sense, life comes out of matter, but matter also comes out of life. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tyanit aham savasha prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. There are two energies, material and spiritual, and both originally come from Krishna. Krishna is the supreme living being. Although it may be said that in the material world a living force is generated from matter, it must be admitted that the original matter is generated from this living being. Nitya Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The conclusion is that everything, both material and spiritual, is generated from the Supreme Being. From the evolutionary point of view, perfection is reached when the living entity attains the platform of a Brahman. A Brahman is a worshipper of the Supreme Brahman, and the Supreme Brahman worships the Brahman. In other words, the devotee subordinate the Supreme Lord, and the Lord is inclined to see to the satisfaction of his devotee. The Brahman is called Dvija Deva, and the Lord is called Dvija Deva Deva. He is the Lord of Brahmins. The evolutionary process is also explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya, chapter 19, wherein it is said that there are two types of living entities, moving and non-moving. Among moving entities, there are birds, beasts, aquatics, human beings, and so on. Of these, human beings are supposed to be the best, but they are few. Of these small numbers of human beings, there are many low-class human beings, like Malachas, Pulindas, Bodhas, and Sabaras. The human being, elevated enough to accept the Vedic principle, is superior. Among those who accept the Vedic principles generally, known as Varnashram, presently known as the Hindu system, few actually follow these principles. Of those who actually follow the Vedic principles, most perform fruitive activities or pious activities for elevation to a high position. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatata siddhayi. Out of many attached to fruitive activity, one may be a jnani, that is, one philosophically inclined and superior to the karmis. Yatatam api siddhanam kashin mam veti tattvataha. Out of many jnanis, one may be liberated from material bondage, and out of many millions of liberated jnanis, one may become a devotee of Krishna. Om Ganatmandasya Gyanjana Svataya Chakshurmutamina Tasma Shigave Maha Kamproti Vachavam Pamamagati Grimya Kripatamam Desha Grimnitarnam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama. With energies manifest in dull matter, beings possessing living force, vegetables, grass, trees, and plants are superior to dull matter, stone, earth, etc. Superior to non-moving plants and vegetables are worms and snakes, which can move. Superior to worms and snakes are animals that have developed intelligence. Superior to animals are human beings, and superior to human beings are ghosts because they have no material bodies. Superior to ghosts are the Gandharvas, and superior to them are the Siddhas. Superior to the Siddhas are the Kanadas, and superior to them are the Suras. Superior to the Suras are the demigods, and of the demigods, Indra, the king of heaven, is supreme. Superior to Indra are the direct sons of Lord Brahma, sons like Daksha, and supreme among Brahma's sons is Lord Shiva. Since Lord Shiva is the son of Lord Brahma, Brahma is considered superior, but Brahma is also subordinate to me, the supreme personality of Godhead. Because I am inclined to the Brahmins are best of all. So here is some qualities mentioned of the Brahmins. So Prabhupada is quite keen to make the point that just because someone is born in a Brahmin family or calls himself a Brahmin doesn't mean to say they are a Brahmin. They have to be by quality, by qualities, qualifications. So there's 4 qualities which are specifically mentioned there, which is Shama, Dhamma, Satya, and Tiksha. Can anyone tell me what Shama means?
Peace.
Peace. That's Shanti. Although it would bring about peace.
Controlling the mind.
Controlling the mind. Yeah, if we have an uncontrolled mind, we can't have peace. Dhamma.
Controlling the senses.
Yeah, controlling the senses. This is how Bhakti Yoga works also. We engage our senses in Krishna's service, and it controls the senses, which are the outlets and inlets of the mind. So this is one way to engage the mind and the senses. And Satya. Those clean. Truthfulness. And the last one, Tiksha.
Forgiveness.
Try again.
Tolerance.
Yeah, so these are 4 of the main qualities mentioned in the purport there. That controlling your senses, controlling your mind, being truthful, and being tolerant. So if we want to aspire to a Brahmin, so sometimes devotees, they happen to be in the temple for a certain number of days, which turn into weeks, which turn into years, and then they get a Brahmin initiation, they get a thread put around them. And then this Prabhupada says this does not mean say they're a Brahmin, it means that they're eligible for training to be a Brahmin. And we're showing promise, that we could become a Brahmin. Prabhupada also says that Brahmin means memory. If we have not a good memory, then it's difficult to become a Brahmin, because Brahmin has to remember so many slokas and things like that. But above these things, of course, is the qualifications, the actual personal qualities, such as here's controlling the mind, the senses, being truthful, and being tolerant. So whatever background one comes from, one can develop these. And particularly in the association of devotees, one can develop them quicker. When we're living in this day and age, when we're living on top of each other and lockdown, then sometimes our tolerance is tested, our sense control is tested, our control of the mind is tested. Then, so these things are tested. So this is, when the test is there, it's an opportunity to try to muster up some bhakti and to take shelter in the holy name, to take shelter in the teachings. The more we hear from authorized sources, then the more that association. So sadhu sangha doesn't necessarily mean to say that we have to go into the temple room and we can do anything. It doesn't matter, we're in the temple room, it's sadhu sangha, we call it sadhu sangha. It means exchanging, loving exchanges, giving, receiving gifts, inquiring confidentially, hearing, chanting in association with each other, discussing spiritual subject matter. It could be pastimes of Krishna, Krishna's devotees, it could be philosophical points. So this is sadhu sangha. We come away feeling enriched, feeling stronger in our spiritual standing. So this all begins with hearing. So the more we hear, then the more we become steady in devotional service, hearing from the right source. So Prabhupada was not so enamored by people calling themselves Brahmin if they had no qualifications. So I remember Hridayananda Maharaj giving a class once, and he asked some Indian folks, he said to them, so if a Brahmin drinks alcohol, is he still a Brahmin? If a Brahmin eats meat, is he still a Brahmin? So it's not necessarily that just because one is born into a Brahmin family, being born into a Brahmin family gives you the good opportunity. Just like when one gets initiated as a Brahmin, you've got an opportunity to become trained as a Brahmin, to develop those qualities. And so similarly on the other, or diametrically, on the other side, if one is not born into a Brahmin family, or born into a situation which is conducive for spiritual life, then if they happen to get the right association, then they can become qualified, even more qualified than someone who's actually just born into a Brahmin family. And there's examples of that in the Shastra. Vidura, he was born as the son of a maidservant, which is generally considered to be a low-class birth. But because he was so qualified, then he was on the level of a self-realized soul, a Brahmin, spiritual master, Mahajan. He was on that level. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Guna karma vibhaga. So by one's guna, one's qualities, by karma, one's activities, that is how one should be known, not simply by their birth. You often give the example, if someone is the son or daughter of a brain surgeon, and then you have to go in for an operation, but the brain surgeon's too busy, and and his son pops up and just says, don't worry, my dad's a brain surgeon, I'll take care of you. Just come into my waiting room. And he said, oh, okay, are you a brain surgeon as well? He said, well, my dad's one, and I've heard him talk about these things at dinner time before, so I'm sure I could have a good bash at it. You wouldn't be thinking, okay, unless you were like severely demented by whatever was going on in your head, you would think, no, I think I'll just wait. I'll wait till I get the real brain surgeon. So similarly, just because someone says they're a guru, or someone says they're a Brahmin, or someone says they're a devotee, it doesn't mean to say they have to accept that. We can see, of course, we shouldn't be cynical and think nobody's a devotee. That's the other side of the scale where we think nobody's a devotee. Because Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, then we're going to see faults in each other, even if we're trying to be a devotee. But Prabhupada says the main thing is sincerity, we're trying. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that in this endeavour is no loss or diminution. So he's not asking for perfection, he's asking that we endeavour, try. Like that old saying, God loves a trier. So we're trying our best, but we don't just use that. It's like we'll do any old thing and say, I'm trying my best. That's an excuse. Often that's an excuse. We've had that given. So the idea is that Krishna is the ability. So if we're taking shelter of Krishna, Krishna can make us do even better and better and better. You can see in the life example of Srila Prabhupada what he achieved in a few short years. And we can think, well, that's not the activities of an ordinary person. To write so many books, to travel throughout the world, to open so many centres in a short period of time, to have so many dedicated followers, and to have a following which is going on, even increasing after his physical departure. So that's not something which is ordinarily achievable, which means empowered by the Lord. And there was one scholar, Sanskrit scholar, American professor of Sanskrit, and he summarized, he'd read Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, he'd read all the Vedic literature, so he was well acquainted with Vedic philosophy. And he said, according to what Srila Prabhupada did in the short period of time that he came to the West, then he says that people cannot estimate the greatness of this person. He's speaking from a neutral point of view. He's not a devotee. It's not that he's a paid mouthpiece or something like that. He was speaking on his own accord and according to what he'd understood from the Vedic literatures. So he said, according to what this person has done, then he's no less than the Shakti of the Avatar, which means There's two types of Shakti-Vesh avatars. One is directly of the Lord, another one is empowered living entity who comes with a specific mission to keep devotees awake in class. And his mission basically was given to take this chanting Hare Krishna to every town and village. So by his potency, this is going on. You see, just as in Chaitanya Charitamrita, if someone came in contact with Lord Chaitanya, they'd be chanting as if they were delirious, they'd become overwhelmed with chanting and ecstasy. Someone who met that person would also become overwhelmed with Krishna prema, love of God. So in this way, these pastimes are still going on, that perhaps we never met Srila Prabhupada directly, but by the effect of the chanting of the holy name, by the effect of the spiritual energy coming through this instructions and the lifestyle of devotee and the services we engage ourselves in every day by this, and we're becoming connected. So the thing is that, first of all, we may connect mechanically, but because Bhakti Yoga is not a mechanical process, it's not simply that we do 180 obeisances and that's as we're liberated, because that would mean that we're in control of it and there's no other spiritual qualities required. We just have to do something physical. So devotional service is not just a physical thing, it's that as well. We have to engage our physical bodies, and then our bodies are no longer material bodies, it becomes spiritualized. Because just as everything the devotee uses in Krishna service is not a material thing. Material means it's used separate from Krishna. It's used for personal sense enjoyment. So this is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee, is we use things for Krishna. If we're a devotee, if we use it for ourselves, then that's a non-devotional activity. So therefore it pays to take heed, to take stock of what we're doing with ourselves, with our time, with our resources, and ask ourselves, how am I using this in Krishna service? How am I using this to benefit myself? Am I using this to go forward or to go backwards? So Prabhupada emphasizes that one should have the Brahminical qualities, and in this way the heads of state can be guided. So even though Rishabdev was recommending Bharat Maharaj to rule after him, who is a qualified personality also, he wasn't saying that he was an isolated person who could just read it. He wasn't saying that he was the be-all and end-all, that he had no guidance. So he was also encouraging that the Brahmin should be there. So Krishna, being superior to all these different personalities, at the end he refers to himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada says there are many different personalities of Godhead, but of all of them, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's not something which is voted in. It's not like everyone thinks, okay, let's see who's the Supreme. Okay, I vote for Krishna, or I vote for Shiva. Okay, so whoever gets the most votes, they're the Supreme. It's not by vox populi. It's because he's Yogeshwar. It's because he's Anadiradir, Sarvakavarnakarnam. Yogeshwar means he's the master of all mystic powers. So any mystic powers that anyone has, whether it's Brahma, Shiva, or any kind of yogi, sometimes people go and perform some severe tapasya, austerities, penances, and they get some little mystic powers, and because they're Yogeshwar Prasaktanam, their intelligence is spoiled by the enjoyment, the attachment to enjoying the material world and the attachment to opulence. Then they use their mystic powers to gain some cheap following. So therefore, India and even the rest of the world, you get people who emerge onto the scene, and even Prabhupada was talking about it. You give me some money, I'll give you a mantra, and then you'll be God in 3 weeks' time. But still, they're not God. God is always God. He doesn't become God. If God becomes God, that means there was something superior to him in the first place, and then that thing would be God. So these different yogis, incarnations or professed incarnations, self-professed, then they're simply fooling the innocent public. But if we read Srimad Bhagavatam, read Bhagavad Gita, then we can understand what are the qualities of advanced persons, and then we can study and see that. So, of course, as we said earlier on, we don't become hypercritical of devotees, because devotees are in the process of trying, even in the beginning, as we say, if it's mechanical, in due course of time, then that mechanical thing will become a conscious thing. So to begin with, we make a conscious decision that I want to engage in Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. I want to engage in this process of hearing, chanting, etc., offering food. And this way, we connect with the para prakriti, or the superior energy. And we start to disconnect from the apara prakriti, the inferior or material energy. So as we do this, we begin to get some relief from our distresses, and sometimes even we get a little spark of intelligence starts to come back. So at this point, when we start to recover from our materially diseased condition, then we have to be very vigilant that we don't want to fall back into, now that I'm not suffering so much, let me enjoy again. Because what happens is we go back into enjoyment, and then we become covered, and then we start to suffer, and then we come back to Krishna consciousness again. So this is going on in to many different degrees in our life. And finally, when we become Krishna conscious, we wish that we had actually taken to it much sooner. So you never find anyone who became a pure devotee and regretted it, because the nature of the soul, I was just listening to Satyananda Maharaj the other day, and he was saying that the soul is already perfect. We're looking for perfection, but we're already perfect. But because we're misidentifying with our body, our mind, our material intelligence as a self, then we identify with something which is imperfect. So the more we can get in touch with ourselves, the more we engage our mind and senses, and engage all the resources in Krishna's service, and try to do this consciously and with devotion, then the more we become in touch with our real self, which is Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. That is the perfection. Materially, there never be some perfection, because material energy is always changing, and by whose standard is it perfect? So Prabhupada said that we should take the association of pure devotees or devotees. So if someone thinks, well, there's no pure devotees around, then Prabhupada didn't give an excuse where we could say, well, I don't have to take association of anyone then, because no one's pure. He says that pure devotees or devotees. And Prabhupada says, actually, there's many pure devotees on the planet right now. So, and he also said things like, we don't know who's sitting next to us. It could be some elevated soul. Even in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, we see that eternal liberated souls were sent by Lord Chaitanya to associate with other persons whom they thought were simply materialists. But then they seen their attachment to Krishna. Externally, sometimes a devotee may appear like a materialist, but when it comes to hearing and chanting, then they have full absorption. So it's a long purport, and there's many things that can be said about this, such as the evolutionary side of things here. So the soul travels from one body to another, becoming more facilitated. So just like in the material world, which is known as Durgadam, in Sanskrit, the word Durga is referred to as Maya Devi, the consort of Lord Shiva, Shiva and Parvati. Sometimes she's known as Parvati or Durga. And Durga means difficulty. word dura means miserable, to be put into misery. So one who's under the control of the material energy is experiencing various difficulties in the material world, which result in misery. So Krishna says that if we surrender unto him, Mama Maya Duratyaya, then we cross over this Duratyaya. We cross over this ocean of material suffering. So we can try perpetually to solve the problems of material life by making material adjustments in one way or another, but ultimately karma is there, so karma is going to come and the suffering will be there, just like we may find the cure for a certain disease, but then something else will happen, and even people are finding this, that because they take so much antibiotics, then all the things which they try to avoid suffering from, something else comes along and then they have no defense for it. Well, because we cannot escape the laws of nature, the laws of karma are there. We did something in the past and it has to come back, we can't escape it. So a devotee willingly accepts whatever comes their way as being their karma, and patiently accepting, this is where tolerance comes in. We have to accept this is my karma. So we try, if we have some physical problem, we try to deal with it so we can do our service better. Just like if you have a vehicle, you don't just think, well, I want to put petrol in it, I want to put oil in it. It's the vehicle's karma. If it runs out of petrol, we're not going to be silly like that. So we feed the body, we fix the car if something's wrong with it so we can use it. We fix the body if something's wrong, but ultimately we have to accept that some things we cannot fix, and we have to learn tolerance. So the material body is a blessing because it helps to teach us tolerance. And sometimes we may find the association of certain individuals difficult to bear. That means that we have yet to develop more tolerance. It's easy just to blame another person. Well, you're like this, so therefore I'm like this. No, I'm like this because I'm like this. It doesn't matter how someone else behaves if we're tolerant. And Prabhupada gave many examples as well. Back in the 70s, they used to allow smoking on the plane. So they had smoking and non-smoking sections. Actually, maybe someone's seen this comedy movie Airplane some time ago, and it was interesting because there's a Hare Krishna devotee goes to the ticket, and the lady behind who's giving the ticket says chanting or non-chanting. He puts them in the chanting. So people used to ask smoking, non-smoking. So Hari Prabhu was with Prabhupada and another devotee, and he asked for non-smoking section. So because he didn't want Prabhupada to be bothered by smoking. Of course, it's only a few seats behind where the smoking is, so it's still going to affect. But so he arranged for this. But then someone who sat near them were smoking, and Hari he wanted to ask them to move because they'd no right to smoke in a non-smoking section. He says, Prabhupada can ask them to move. He says, if you cannot tolerate, you're no better than them. So he was doing it for Prabhupada's comfort, but Prabhupada was showing the higher lesson to tolerate. We might not smoke, we might not do this, we might not do that, but we have to tolerate other people. Because everyone's got the right to choose, they have their free will, and it's their karma. So we cannot dictate how everyone should be. The best thing we can do is become the living example ourselves and stop trying to project onto others what they should be, because that doesn't change us. So the important point I would say here is that if we want to become dear to Krishna, then develop Brahminical qualities, because Krishna is inclined towards the Brahmins. He's even more inclined towards the cows, because there's this mantra, Namo Brahmana Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha, Go Brahmana. So it's mentioned that the word go, which is cow, or sometimes in Vrindavan say gao, which is the word cow comes from. So this word go comes before Brahmins, so the cows are even more dear to Krishna than the Brahmins. So this, we probably can stop there, but I would say this is an important point, and this is also going to be spoken about in the next couple of verses, qualities of Brahmins. So a Brahmin means one who's actually situated in Brahman. Brahman means spirit. So their knowledge is spiritual, and generally they would guide the government so that whatever the government did was actually well considered for the benefit of everyone, and not just the human beings, all living entities. So for lack of this in the present day governments, then simply all we have is vox populi and democracy. And Prabhupada saying here that even with democracy there should be some Brahmins there to guide those democratically elected personalities. So he's not saying to do away with democracy, but he's saying that Brahmins should be there to guide it. Okay, anyone get any questions or comments?
Just a question about the being trained as a Brahmin, irrespective of how you're born. And so I was just wondering if somebody during the training, someone's being trained to be a Brahmin, and then it becomes obvious that he's not going to be able to be a Brahmin because he's too handicapped. Like you could look at his astrological chart and see, well, the odds are so stacked against him. He can't, and then somebody else may come along, and as he's taking the training, it becomes apparent that he inherently has the mental qualities that maybe won't manifest initially, but now that he's been trained, the superficial kind of roughness is cleansed away, and you see that. So then it would seem that the training is just to uncover what you've been born with.
It's more than that, actually, more than what we've been born with, because in Kali Yuga it's considered that everybody is Sudra or less than Sudra, because in order to be a Sudra you have to have the other classes to relate to. Generally qualities of Sudra is obedience, etc., but if you've got nobody to be obedient to, then you're not being guided by anybody superior. So the Kali Dosh, Nidhi Rajan, the Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, and also is mentioned in the 11th or 12th canto that demons are born in Brahmin families. So another thing to add into the equation is, it's mentioned that even the Paramahamsas are bewildered about what to do in Kali Yuga. So in this sense, then Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam, kalo nisjeva, nisjeva, nisjeva gita. The chanting of the holy name is actually the most sure means of deliverance. And it says 3 times, Harinam eva kevalam, because there's 3 things which it delivers one from. Does anybody know those 3 things? I think you do, you've probably forgotten. Nisjeva, nisjeva, nisjeva. Not this, not that, not that. What are those 3 things? Karma, jnana, and so yoga. So the yoga referred to there is, so the chanting of the holy name is actually coming from the transcendental platform directly. So by linking with the chanting, with the chanting, then we connect with Krishna. And because Krishna is the supreme Brahman, then all the Brahminical qualities can manifest, even if we have the most terrible astrological chart, even the most fallen, because this is the Benedict Lord Chaitanya. He is known he's known as Patita Pavan, or Savior of the most fallen. So you can take anyone from any position and purifying that person to be the topmost devotee, and the examples were shown in the Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So this chanting will take us past this mixed devotional service. We may have some mixed devotional service to begin with, because we have some fruitive or karmic desire. We may desire something, or Jnani, we may be looking to be knowledgeable or to be seen as being knowledgeable, or yogi, mystic powers, or simply looking for moksha or salvation. But by the chanting the holy name, then all good qualities come. And Prabhupada says, you will remember, I'm your good fortune. So he brought so much good fortune to us. And sometimes if the devotees have difficulty, then the recommendation is they up the dosage, they chant more, they hear more. I was speaking with one senior devotee the other day and asking for advice for one devotee who'd approached me, and he said his advice was that he should cut off all social media, internet, things like that, and he should just chant 64 rounds for a full week and reconnect with what he, why that person became a devotee in the first place. So this is the medicine. Enichi Aushadi Maya Nashi Barulagi. The Aushadi, the medicine for the ills of Kali Yuga, is simply chanting the holy name. Everything else will come as a result of that, as we see Prabhupada started this worldwide movement by chanting the holy name, and so much came from it. And because he had so much faith in that, then it came around. So, but still, in answer to your question, it may well be that someone is born in a Brahmin family because Sujinam Srimatam Gehe. If one is unsuccessful in their previous life, then they will be born into a family of aristocracy or Brahmin. So spiritually, or in a situation which is materially affluent, so they don't have to worry about just making ends meet in life. They're not distracted by that. But what they do with that still, then it's just like someone may win the lottery. What they do with it will determine whether that's going to be good or not. So if they take birth in a good family, then that's a good start. But what they do with it is another thing. So in any case, whether one is born in a high family or a low family, then we have to take advantage of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, take advantage of the Yuga Dharma. And in this way, then the real spiritual qualities, which is there, the 26 qualities a devotee can develop. It's okay. Anything else on that or anything else?
It's just a technical question about the verse. Why are asuras so high up in the category? And is asura referring to those of demonic quality, or is it a species?
So it's quite often we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam there's some disputes going on between the suras and the asuras, the demigods and the demons. So they're known as demons because because they're atheistic, they may be materially opulent and materially powerful. So this is kind of talking on a material scale here. Because you may also think, well, why is a ghost more higher than a human being? So if a human, and it says here, because they have no material body, so material body means so many different types of miseries, so they don't have that. But at the same time, they don't have the ability to satisfy their senses in the way a human body, a material body can. So we see that the asuras, they're so powerful and they have so much opulence. If you read later on in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll see about the different planetary systems, the Vedic cosmos. And one of it's called a hellish planet, but it's only called hellish because it's atheistic. There's no opportunity for self-realization or no opportunity for making spiritual advancement. But the opulence there is actually greater than the opulence of the the heavenly planets. So take an example of Hiranyakashipu. So he was considered to be one of the most powerful demons according to the Vedic literatures, which have been described. But he was termed as an asura because he simply wanted to enjoy for himself, and he used the Vedic knowledge to perform great mystic yoga to get benedictions. So this is typically what they do. They'll use the karmakanda, and they'll use Ashtanga yoga, etc., in order to get material benefit. So that's the real difference. But they're so powerful that they can actually go up against powerful demigods who are in control of the material elements. So that's why they're superior. Because they're more superior than simply Gandharvas who sing quite nice. Sometimes you hear a devotee singing, you think, oh, that devotee's a Gandharva. Must have been a Gandharva in their last life. And Gandharvas are probably, watching this thinking, that person sounds like a foghorn, what they're talking about. It's amazing, then we get bewildered by a little opulence, we can do something and everything, and then we get intoxicated by it. And whether we're good at one small thing or another, and it's so temporary because a little adjustment in the material body and we lose that. So we shouldn't be proud of anything we have there. This is the Asuras, they become proud of the opulence they achieve, and then they just want more, and then they try to basically conquer over those who are in control of the material elements, so they can be the supreme controllers. Is that okay?
Yes, based on that, thank you very much. Is a Brahmana then still a material designation, still a material category, a different to Vaishnava?
It's in the social and spiritual order. Then the Brahmin, proper Brahmin, is one who is in knowledge of Brahman, spirit.
Yeah.
So they're considered an intelligent class, and sometimes Brahmins are very intelligent in terms of also material workings, like astrology, gemology, Ayurveda, so many things like that. But a Brahmin, according to Prabhupada's description, is one who knows Brahman, spirit, so that's a real intelligence.
Yeah.
So therefore, true Brahmin is one who's guiding according to spiritual principles and who can direct the other social orders in such a way that they can make gradual advancement. What should you have one time?
It was just a comment that it was a point you were making was about seeing faults in others and trying to kind of impose our idea of how the person should be. And I was just thinking it's interesting that nobody's better at being him than he. So sometimes we look at someone and think, I could do a better version of him. And so we try and impose our idea of how we think he should be. But he's being who he is as best as he can, and nobody can do that better than him because he's right there in there.
True. And the truth of the matter is, what we don't like about them is something which is in us, and it's easier to rub it out from them than to rub it out ourselves. If everyone was to be like us, say all of a sudden everybody looked like us, talked like us, behaved like us, we'd be in hell. It would be horrible. We wouldn't be able to tolerate ourselves. Unless you're like really full of yourself, unless you're really big-headed. But that's a good point. We have to allow people to be who they are. Krishna, he can perfectly reciprocate with unlimited living entities, and each living entity is totally different, unique personality. And there's no finite number of models. Everyone is an individual, unique. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of their own body, not conscious of someone else's. Everyone is completely unique and has a right to their own personality. And we don't have the right to change that. Just as we don't want people to change us. So we have to try to see it from that point of view. And it's a good point that that person is they're being themselves. It might well be that if something changes in us, then the things which we found intolerable in the past become actually a source of pleasure, or become a source of learning, or become a source of amusement. So the real problem is with ourselves. Of course, it doesn't mean to say that if someone points something out in us, we just say, your problem is you can't tolerate me. Because then nobody changes. So we are trying to improve our character. So by trying to improve, making a conscious endeavour to be like that, And by applying the process, then it will come automatically. It doesn't come automatically just by being unaware of the need for changing. There has to be a conscious endeavour to work on it. And we get plenty of opportunities every day. We better close at this point. Thank you. Iskon Guru Govinda ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande.
Yeah.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki